And Anthony, talk for a second. Make sure you're okay.
No, he's late.
Anthony and I weren't here before when he was late. You're good now. Cool.
Good now? Yeah.
By the way,
I rebooted the computer, so.
Is this like Bill Meltzer, the only reporter that's allowed to go down there right now? What's happening with that for the Flyers things, for the practices?
Well, there is, I think, a total of maybe 7 or 8 reporters that are the regular everyday beats that have some sort of, like Charlie O'Connor, Bill.
But Bill's the best.
Bill.
And then like an on-air talent.
Bill. Just say Meltzer, and it's just like forget.
Bill's on an island by himself.
And then an on-air talent, and not much else.
You've got Jordan Hall. You got Jordan Hall from NBCSN.
Okay.
You'll probably have Wayne Fish, Rob Parent, the usual.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I wasn't sure how they were doing that down there.
And I think it was Katie Hammer's there too.
Oh,
Katie Emmer, you mean?
Yeah, Emmer. Sorry.
Yeah.
There used to be a Katie Hammer that was in credentialing back.
Was that the daughter of Mike Hammer?
No. She used to do credentialing for the Flyers. So I got my Katie's mixed up.
One more time.
But
here we go. Let's go.
Well,
are we live?
We're live, actually. That's what we were trying to tell you.
I pressed the button. Don't worry.
That's all right. Who cares? We're good.
We didn't say anything bad.
No, we didn't say anything bad. Thank God.
My small topic is yesterday I had a real moment of weakness. At around 8 o'clock, there was really not much on TV, and I was DVRing wrestling so I could fast forward through most of the crap and watch the 1 or 2 good matches they have. And so I ended up watching an inning of the Phillies Facebook Live inter-squad game, and I kept the announcing off. Like, I am not a Fransky LA guy. I don't want to hear it. But I watched it.
Fransky and LA are great. I'm not hearing none of your nonsense. Now, if it,
great on your ears.
Yeah, but this
that's what they do.
This is the thing, Ant.
McCarthy maybe, but not Fransky.
Russ was rooting for both sides to lose.
No, I wasn't. But the one thing that I shouldn't have been shocked at this, but the one thing I was a little shocked at, I don't think Bryce Harper's cut his hair since last year.
Oh, he had the kid, and he just continues to go full Samson here.
It definitely looks like Samson. I think that was the one thing I was like, whoa, look at that.
Yeah, he's got that. His mane is pretty rock star right now.
But I did watch, and after an inning, I was like, all right, this is good. But it was good to see it, whether it continues or not. And look, they didn't have a ton of viewers. They had about 3,500 when I was watching, and it was in like the 5th or 6th inning. So, but you know what? Fans appreciate it, and that's all that matters. I give the Phillies credit because they actually did something to engage with the fans, and I know some other teams tried, but everybody should be doing it. I don't know why Major League Baseball isn't doing that across the board.
I don't know either. It's kind of crazy.
It is.
Why would they be doing that? That makes sense. Quickly. So yesterday, after the show, we had one of those night. I don't know how you guys are with bugs. I am not good with them.
What do you mean? Like, do we like bugs?
Yeah, I mean, are you like the kind of person that's really?
No, I don't like bugs.
Computer bugs or insects here? I'm guessing.
I had a computer bug yesterday, actually.
All right. Well, this is I want to show you something here. This is called a wolf spider. Okay, now.
Oh God.
Wolf spiders are in Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, nice.
They're big. They are the most poisonous spider in Pennsylvania. They're not going to kill you, but they're going to mess you up pretty good.
They're going to make you sick.
They're going to make you pretty sick. So, our house is, it's like everyone's house right now. It has its moments where it doesn't feel the cleanest. And I was cleaning yesterday, and I was, my wife and I were in the kitchen doing different things, and suddenly one of these ran out from behind the counter into the middle of the floor, and like both of us were like, freaking out. My son, who loves animals, he'll just go pick it up and move it, and he threw it off. So I'm calling for him. I'm yelling for my son to come down and get this thing. And as we do that, the way wolf spiders give birth is they carry an egg sac on their back, which just kind of explodes into 1,000 wolf spiders. And that's what happens in front of my wife and I. Oh my God. I'm telling you, when I can still have like my arms are still like, we flipped. I mean, it was the most horrifying moment ever. Like just like right out of a horror film.
Arachnophobia 3. God.
It was the beauty of nature right in the middle of your
got kitchen. Most of them out alive. Some of them my wife killed before we could stop her because she was on a rampage.
Listen, I can't blame her. I mean,
and I said, at some point you have to defend your family. These are they would have killed us all if they grew up. But my God, it was the kind of thing that thank God we were there at the right time. Like, like it had
How
we
do
not
you know they would have killed you all?
well, no,
Like,
because there were this many. There were so many of them.
that's a little bit of an over dramatization, though, Eck.
It was. I can't even begin to tell you how horrifying it was. It's like to see one big wolf spider explode into one big wolf spider and thousands of little wolf spiders at the same time. It was just like they were all really tiny, but of course, I guess she had just given birth, so she was going nuts. So she's like running around, circling and everything, and all the little ones are. Oh my god, they were just like. So I still feel as if every second now something is crawling on me. I can't get rid of that. Anyway, just my little thing to share. Let's start the show, should we?
I hate mosquitoes. Is that included?
Oh yeah, that counts.
But they love me. They love my fat legs.
Jeez.
They hate me, but they love my wife.
Yeah, my daughter gets like just gets eaten alive by mosquitoes to the point where like she just welts up with welts everywhere.
We're 50-50 in our house. Like me and my oldest don't the mosquitoes don't like us, but my little one and my wife, they just
Let me give you the maybe it's an old wives' tale type of thing in terms of a solution for mosquitoes.
Yeah.
To kill, when you get bit by a mosquito and it starts getting really itchy and it blows up on your legs or your arms, the surefire thing to make it stop itching is vinegar.
Interesting.
Rubbing vinegar on there, it neutralizes the itching, and within a couple hours it goes down.
Like white vinegar, apple
White
cider
vinegar doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Apple cider vinegar, white vinegar, malt. If you use malt vinegar, you're going to smell like a bunch of French fries. But what the hell? Who cares?
Well, one last thing on spiders, real quick, because I remember this.
Sure, because they're so much fun.
Yeah, no, they are. I mean, people, they're good to have in your house. Like I won't kill a spider.
What are they good unless they're that big and they're eating a rodent? What good are they for?
No,
you?
I mean that. Yeah, I mean no, they are.
Spiders eat the flies.
They get mosquitoes and flies.
That's true.
If you let them build giant nests, throughout your house, which you shouldn't. But anyway, so the thing, there's this thing in America, that and I don't know if I'm imagining this is a wives' tale, but everyone probably knows it, that you're never more than 6 feet away from a spider. That at any time in your house that there are so many spiders that they're never more than 6 feet away from your spider, and
I mean, you're social distancing from the spider.
Right, they're very good at that. But so it occurs to me like either that means there's just a lot of spiders all the time, or like every individual person has been assigned a spider by the spider community, and that spider is following you around all the time. So I'm not sure which it is. It's one or the other. But I'd like to think it's the second because that sounds a little bit nicer. Ready?
There's nothing nice about spiders. Let's move on.
All right, here we go. Oh man, I heard that on a podcast too. It's pretty funny. There is nothing nice about spiders. I agree. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, July 15th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello, and today is tax day, and I paid my taxes.
Nice for you. Good for you.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Anthony Mingioni, and maybe we should have the Seattle Spiders.
There you go.
No, that's the Cleveland name for baseball.
That's right.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I already did my taxes when you were supposed to. So
Spiders are nice. And I'm Eklund, and I, of course, filed for an extension of my taxes like I do every year.
You got a free extension.
I get to October. That's the way it works. All right. HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we're going to start. We have a couple announcements today right off the bat of awards that are out there. And, let's start off first. Let's see, Mike, which one should we start with? Should we start with the
Let's start with the Calder, and let me just tell Nicholas McKinnon in the chat, Tang is not a write-off. No, but
give us the Calder finalists, Mike. Who are they?
Calder finalists? Not surprisingly, Kubalik, the 30-goal scorer from the Chicago Blackhawks, who sort of was if you can be under the radar and score 30 goals, he was it. And the two young great defensemen in Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes. And in spite of the fact that Kubalik had a surprising year, I think he's going to finish third, and it's a question of who's going to finish first or second. I'll let everybody go here, but I all year thought it was going to be Makar, but then he got hurt, and Hughes kept improving and getting better and better. And now I think it's not going to be a runaway, but I think Hughes is going to win. But let's get everybody else's thoughts.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was tough for me because early in the season I was thinking Makar too, and then when Makar was out, Quinn Hughes really accelerated. And when they were both back, I was kind of watching them both again, and Quinn Hughes did take a jump that not only was he, to me, the Calder winner, but he was all of a sudden now one of the 10 best defensemen in the league. And I don't think Makar has reached that yet. And it's not because of anything defensively with both of them. It's just there's a thing about Quinn Hughes when he brings the puck up to the ice, how quickly he can make a decision and decide what to do with the puck and make those good decisions it seems like every play. That is just a little better than Makar. I mean, they're both great on the power play. They're both terrific players. But Quinn Hughes has that little thing, and I think now teams are starting to look at what Quinn Hughes does with the puck and trying to get some of their defensemen to do it too, because for him it was innate, but now he's sort of teaching others in the league.
Right.
Anthony, it's funny. It's funny that when we were at the draft a few years ago and everybody was complaining about Hughes in that, well, he's small. He's 5'9". He's 140, 150 pounds. How is he going to withstand the rigors of the NHL? That's not a factor anymore. Nobody's talking about that anymore.
Nobody does. And again, it comes down to, high level, your skill level, skill set, your attention to detail. Somebody who's watched Quinn Hughes at this point now, an advanced defenseman at such a young age. Both of them. I mean, it's tough. Again, you do wonder about if Makar was healthy.
Yeah.
To me, then this would be a really difficult decision to make.
Yeah.
But the injury really kind of gives the award to Hughes. But nothing against Colorado's got a franchise level defenseman in Makar, even if he doesn't win the trophy this year. He's a fan. Both teams are very fortunate to have who they have on their blue line to lead them into the future.
And Jan, it's funny because I think this was a pretty good class and guys who could get overlooked. I mean, in a normal year, I think Adam Fox probably would have been able to get into the top three. A guy like Victor Olofsson with the Sabres had a really good year. This was a good class, but I don't think it's any comment to the negative of those players that they didn't get into the top three. This was just a good class.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Olofsson hadn't gotten hurt, he might have very well have beaten out Kubalik, given how hot he was early on in the season. You can also make an argument for Merzlikins, right?
Yep.
Oliver Merzlikins really came on, and he also should get some votes. And look, I'm biased. I don't know if I put Fox necessarily in the class of Makar and Hughes, but I don't think it's that far off, given what we saw this year and given where we think his future is going to be. In terms of vote, I think you're splitting hairs. I do think it's going to be razor thin between the two of them. I mean, Makar missing time, I think, swayed people towards Hughes a little bit, but I do think that Makar's early work probably outweighed to a certain extent what Hughes was, although Hughes continually progressed and got better as the season wore on. I mean, for me, I still give Makar a slight edge over Hughes, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Hughes ends up beating him, but I do think it's going to be extremely close between the two of them, where they'll split the first and second place votes, and one vote may decide who ends up actually getting the award.
Well, here we go. This is our buddy in the chat room, Fun Cozy, and is still bitter about Ken Holland passing over Hughes. I don't blame you at all there, buddy. And when that happened, I remember how crazy that felt. And because I know how much Hughes wanted to play for Detroit too. So, Russ, what were your thoughts when that happened?
Again, I'm not going to go there right now.
Yeah,
I understand what the thinking is, but I'm not going to go there. Let's wait this out. It's too early.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. I wanted to point out something because I don't get to brag enough. Anyway, this is my blog dated what happened in the Pacific Division on October 4th, 2019. Okay, and
could you check the messages, please?
What was that?
You had
3,270 private messages. Well, I'm glad you're getting back to people.
That was in October. It's probably up to 5,000
I
now.
clean that out all the time. It's just like
half of them were spam.
No, they aren't actually. You can't spam into our message board.
How would you know? You haven't opened them.
I have opened a ton of them. I open them all the time.
Yeah, you still have 3,270.
I didn't bring. Brought you in here to say something nice about me, not this. All right, so let's move on. All right,
You open the Pandora's box, not us.
so first off, let me point out the number 6 spot for the San Jose Sharks here that I have, which everybody was, very upset about at the time. Not making playoffs. Okay, they actually were worse than I thought they'd be. They finished in 8th. But number 5, Vancouver Canucks. And what's the last sentence of this thing? It's probably pretty small and hard to read, but I will show you.
I see it. That's
All
good.
right. Yes. My wacky prediction here: a Hughes will win the Calder and not be named Jack, but Quinn. There you go.
I don't know if that's wacky. We can't call that wacky. It's a good prediction.
It's not totally wacky. You're right, but it is a prediction.
I mean, he's a year. He was a year older, so
If you would have said
I don't. No one else is going to do it. So
if you would have written Kubelik in, if you would have written Kubelik in for the Chicago Blackhawks, then I would say, yeah, that's a wacky.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I agree with you 100%. And Kubelik's
that's the one that's really amazing. But
yeah, the only one who knew Kubelik was his mom and pop. So that
right.
And he was really just such a great pickup for the Hawks and such and the cool thing about Kubelik, he's 24 too. That's like that's one of those cool things that you get like a guy who comes in at 24.
He's also with Patrick Kane, which helps.
Right, which so there's no question. So to me, I would still kind of go with I still kind of lean towards Makar, my pick, but it's tight. I mean, Hughes is so good. And Hughes has arguably had a bigger impact. It definitely has had a bigger impact on his team, I guess you could say.
I think that's true.
I'll just say this, and again, normally you evaluate the quality of a draft and who should be picked where 4 or 5 years after said draft. But if you look at that 2018 draft right now, I don't think if you're Buffalo or Carolina, you're deviating from Dahlin and Svechnikov. Kotkaniemi was a reach. We said that back in June of that year that he was a reach at 3. He was supposed to be in the maybe 10 or 11, and he went at 3 because of his great physical set. Brady Tkachuk was a great pick, and he was supposed to go there. Arizona and Detroit, Barrett Hayton, he went probably where he should have gone, but there was a little bit of a concern there. And Zadina was supposed to be in the top 3 or 4, and he slipped to 6. So I don't know if Funky really can say anything about that, because I think Zadina there was talk about Zadina going 2 for a point. So
everybody developed at a different wave, at a different set. So I'm not, even though those other players are now already contributing in the NHL, that does not mean yet that the players that you picked are not going to be productive NHL players.
You know what the other thing is too that we should take into account? I looked at it. Hughes averaged a little bit more ice time, which is fine, but his defensive pairing his partner is never going to be as good as Cale Makar's partner based on the team.
Right.
And I think that's something where I don't want to take away anything from Makar because he's done it at every level, but maybe that's why Hughes wasn't great out of the gate, because, he had a little bit tougher team to sort of get going than Colorado.
He's the youngest of the 3 of them, right? He's the youngest of the 3 guys. So,
plus, also remember, Makar had a couple games in the playoffs last year to kind of get his feet wet and get acclimated to the speed of the NHL, where Hughes came in somewhat cold, learning just in training camp and starting the season.
And here's
an article to do sometime on the 3 major over the course of time. There's 3 places where hockey players come from in the NHL, right? Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Michigan. Those are the 3 that, if you went through time, and the Wild have tended towards a lot of Minnesota players. The Bruins have tended.
Don't ask Brent Flair about that. He'll sidestep you on that.
Yeah, that's true. But the Bruins have
high schoolers.
The Bruins have tended towards a lot of Boston players, and they obviously don't have an issue bringing Boston guys back into town.
Well,
but the Hawks,
they haven't done it as much lately. They've strayed away from that lately.
Well, here's
tend to go, a little bit in the opposite direction. I think sometimes for that. I'm sorry. The Red Wings tend to go a little bit the opposite way. They do draft a lot of Europeans for one, but they also, I think about like Mike Modano, who's right from that area. The players that they passed on,
Here's an indicator of how it is too early to evaluate that particular draft. After Quinn Hughes, in terms of the being selected after him, who has the most points so far in the 2018 draft? Joel Farabee.
Yeah.
21 points. 21 points in 52 games. So
but it's opportunity.
It's opportunity, exactly.
Immature, different things. So many different things there, right? So, and Farabee, Hughes, to do it as a defenseman that young is really impressive. Defense take a long time. And, Farabee is a forward, and we all say he's almost too young to be there. Should maybe be there, but he's a forward. The difference, with a defenseman in that,
Yeah.
it's enormous. I mean, that's enormous.
Even just the responsibility of being the point guy in the power play. The puck jumps over your stick a couple times, you're not going to be on the point on the power play anymore.
Now, here, just moving on to the Jack Adams Award for the best coach. The three nominees, not surprisingly, John Tortorella for Columbus, Alain Vigneault for Philadelphia, and Bruce Cassidy for Boston. I mean, Cassidy, had the Bruins in position to win the President's Trophy and probably would have had the season been completed. Torts did a unbelievable job with a devastated roster in terms of injuries and in terms of defections via free agency. I don't know how that team made the playoffs, but they would have made the playoffs as a 16-team playoff team. So, and Vigneault, I mean, ask Russ and Anthony, they saw firsthand what Vigneault did with the Flyers. So I think three deserving nominees.
You can make probably an argument here for Mike Sullivan, and there's a lot of noise out there saying possibly that one of those candidates could be swapped out. I think
people were burying Sullivan last year, so
they were burning him last year. I would say in this circumstance, I think all three are deserving. It's going to be really interesting to see because this is a tough one to parse.
It is
because you got Cassidy who managed to take a team that was that absolutely had the most devastating of moments, losing a Game 7 at home in the Stanley Cup Finals, and they're right back in it for the President's Trophy the following year. That's not you could say, that's not an easy task. That's a difficult thing to get that motivation back up again. And then obviously what Vigneault was able to do again with the Flyers sort of treading water for so many years now and figuring out and adjusting and obviously personnel. I think the Flyers were fortunate this season in that they really did a good job identifying the veteran personnel they needed to bring in to augment the growth of the younger players on their team as well. But Elaine made it work. I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, the system fits the players that are in place. And it's worked so far for Philadelphia. They're a very aggressive, high tempo team, and players buy into an aggressive style.
The only reason I would edge it towards Torts is not as much talent to work with, and even for a while, wasn't even sure who the goalie was.
Right.
And that maybe that was just a break for Torts that, he got a young guy in there that got hot, but also maybe it's just because everything else was going right. But I felt like Torts with all the injuries, losing Ryan Murray, guys like that eventually.
Seth Jones and
they did get by injuries, but what people don't give enough credit to to the farm system that the Blue Jackets have too. Like they have players. I mean, a lot of unknown players, they
do, but they still don't score a lot of goals. The margin of victory is a lot closer.
It's always tight for the Jackets, but again, if it's a tight game,
they lost Bobrovsky. They lost Panarin. I mean, they
lost Bjorkstrand during the year. They lost Jones during the year. They lost their goalies during the year. I mean,
let's not.
It was literally bailing wire. He was putting together a team and keeping them in the race, right? And this is one of those. It's interesting because we talk a lot about should playoffs matter and making the playoffs matter. And this year, you kind of have to consider where Columbus is. There's no way, given the losses, that they should be anywhere even remotely close to making a play-in tournament. So to me, as good of a job as Vigneault's done, and look, I liked him in New York, and he just kind of his time ended here for whatever reason that they needed to make a change. But I do think I do need to be close, but I do think give Torts a slight edge over Vigneault just because of what he had to work with and the fact that he had to overcome so many injuries to get this team. Josh Anderson was hurt, didn't play well. They just had so many guys that were out during the year.
And I think the honorable mention, somebody who didn't make the list, I think Jared Bednar might have.
Yeah, he should get honorable mention. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare that this award is always an award that's debated as to how we should give it out, right? Like this is the award. Like, okay, we have three totally. The interesting thing is, three nominees from all different arguments as to how you should give it out.
Well, this is the time where somebody's going to win it this year, and they won't be fired next year. They'll break the trend for sure.
I would think, but you never know, right? I mean,
no. I think all three are safe. I don't think any of them get fired.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. But Tort, don't underestimate what Torts can do.
That's fair.
But I mean, you have the coach, like you said, who had maybe the best team in the NHL last year and brought him back as the best team in the NHL again this year. That is an accomplishment, but not usually rewarded for this particular award. for whatever reason, and then you have the coach who took a team that wasn't supposed to be in the playoffs in Philly, or most people didn't have in the playoffs in Philly, and makes.
Well, all right, but let's be realistic. So Chuck Fletcher made moves in the offseason that most of us liked. It's not like Jarmo Kekalainen made a lot of moves in the offseason, and we all said without Panarin, Columbus is not making the playoffs. We all said it.
No, I actually had him as a playoff team.
Whatever, you're the one.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm not gonna sit there, pat myself.
Most of the world said they are not making the
guy would
playoffs.
brag about that kind of thing. But
I would say that I don't ever underrate John Tortorella's ability to get players to rally around him. He has a singular ability to do that, and he fosters that ultimate us against the world mentality. Always has players, as much as they may at times find him abrasive. We've heard it from Vinny Lecavalier, from many players, about how much of a better player that he makes them in the end. So. It's going to be real interesting. If I had to place the order here, I would probably agree that if I'm going 1, 2, 3, I'm probably going to go Torts, Vigneault, Cassidy. But it's a tight 1, 2, 3.
It is tight.
It's a tight 1, 2, 3.
Now yesterday I went on the show after our show yesterday, like I told you, I was cheating on you guys for a second, and went on with Kevin Allen, and he had me on as a guest on his podcast, and my job was to talk about how the Flyers could possibly win the Stanley Cup.
Adulterer.
And I went on there, and I did my best. And and one of the things I brought up to me that why the Flyers are a better team than people don't realize they are, is one of the things I will give Vigneault credit for, and that is that the Flyers for the last 5 years, or not last 5, let's say last 3 years, at least, didn't play first periods. Like they were there. I mean, it was an amazing thing. And what really turned the Flyers around was the fact that Torts got them coming out playing first periods in the last month and a half of the season. And and even in the beginning of this season, they didn't play first periods, but he did. I mean, Vigneault, sorry, not Torts. Vigneault got him doing that. And that was a hell of an accomplishment, because that everybody tried everything under their, and the crazy, and why my argument to Kevin as to why the Flyers were better than people realized is that Flyers team that didn't play first period still was competitive. Like they were very good at coming back from 1-0, 2-0. They didn't win as many times as they should have, but they showed that they could almost play 2 periods and almost make the playoffs. Like they were right on the edge a couple times doing that. Now with them actually playing 3 periods, they're actually a pretty darn good team. And I think that's what you're seeing.
I have a pre-season betting line for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and for a few sites, they were the worst. Their odds of winning the cup was plus 10,000.
Yeah. No, they were easy to pick against. I mean, they lost so many people. They didn't go out and make a lot of changes, like you said. There's a lot up there. There's a lot of reasons. I do think that a lot of Jarmo's thinking on this, and I talked to people, and that why they didn't go out and get a lot of people was, one, they really did want to see what they had, because they had a seriously good group of young players, and they wanted to give them an opportunity. And Jarmo has this thing about that if you work hard, you should be rewarded for it, and so I'll see NHL teams where players work hard and they get to the point where they're about to come in, and then somebody goes out and signs a Kevin Hayes or whatever, and they're shot, they're so I think Kekalainen says we're going to build that culture here where we're going to give these guys a chance, and that's what he did, and they showed up. I mean, some of the players showed up as pretty big players. The Flyers did make a couple good moves. Fletcher's moves. My two the 2 big ones with Hayes and Niskanen to me were 2 very strong moves, but they were also very old school Flyer moves. This was because they're good moves for now. They're good moves in this year and next year, Hayes and Niskanen, but and this was a typical, Ed Snyder Flyers, is that they would do what they had to do to stay competitive always, but wouldn't look towards they weren't necessarily the best moves for their future, Hayes and Niskanen, they were.
How's the Hayes?
I would say this, Ek, that I think they looked at areas that they struggled in. Penalty kill was obviously a big bugaboo for them the last few years. That has improved immensely, I think, with the acquisition of both of those players, but specifically Hayes. He's a specialist in that area.
Yeah. Right.
They needed strength. Again, at the end of the day, the Flyers were not strong down the middle. And that's been a problem for them the last several years. Having Giroux playing center, when you're going up against big-bodied Metro Division has got a lot of big-bodied centers. You have to be able to match up with them. And now, again, in theory, if they would have had Patrick, they would have had 3. They didn't, but they do go out and get Derek Grant at the deadline, who's a bigger-bodied center as well.
Right.
That kind of helped them. But again, that partnership of down the middle of having Hayes and Couturier on the top line allows them to sort of beat that, play that system that Elaine wants to do, the hyper-aggressive, physical, 2-man high forecheck that has worked for them. And again, you also needed in Niskanen, you needed somebody who could pair and with Provorov, who really could. You need a cerebral player who knew when to play back and when to jump up with Provy. And I think that was the big thing. The one move that I probably got is underrated. I don't think it's talked about enough is the Braun acquisition, and for the criticism that it got. Them trading 2 second-round picks, and we know for a fact that there was competition for Braun, and there was a lot of competition acquiring Braun. Yet he's been one of their best defensive defensemen this season, and it's allowed them to play 3 balanced pairs for most of the year.
And his loss in San Jose can't really be underplayed either. I mean, honestly, that's a big loss. Yeah. I mean, that really, when you look, because Sharks are one of my teams I follow closely, and that really was something that they felt.
The Sharks had to choose between trading Braun and trading Brendan Dillon, and in the end, they traded both of them because I don't think they thought that they were going to be in a position where they were going to miss the playoffs as badly as they did. And I think they kept Dillon because they thought Dillon, along with Carlson, Vlasic, and Brent Burns, would make a pretty good top 4, and they would be able to contend in the playoffs again, and everything just completely fell apart, and then they ended up trading Dillon for draft picks too. So
but let's break this down. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois led Columbus in scoring with 49 points, and Oliver Bjorkstrand was first in goals with 21, and Zach Werenski at 20, and then they had like 3 or 4 other guys with like 10, 11, 14. There wasn't that much there. No matter how much faith they had in their young system, they didn't. What they brought up was not even close to the changes that Philly was able to make, like with Kevin Hayes.
Part of that is the numbers are impacted by guys being out, right? Bjorkstrand missed a lot of time. Other guys missed time, right? So their numbers overall are skewed somewhat because there's so many guys who were out.
I don't think it would have been I don't think it would have been that much difference. Maybe you give them 10% jump. I don't think.
They also didn't get the performances out of players that they thought they were, like Wenberg, who had another bad year. So I mean,
well, you could say that's basically the norm now for Wenberg.
Right. And coincidentally, that was the case after they signed him to the big contract. So he's sort of fallen down since they actually paid him the money. Yeah, I mean, for all the success stories that they have on defense, I mean, they have a lot of young guys, and they had a lot of hole pluggers. I mean, Nathan Gerbe played a fairly big role for them in terms of coming up and plugging holes. I mean, it was like, I mean.
Yeah, like Eric Robinson played 50 games for Princeton. I always liked him, but I wouldn't have imagined that he would have been this big of a cog in one season for Columbus, and he really was. And so,
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's why I give him the edge.
Yeah, I think it's tight. I think either Torts or Vino are deserving of it. And it is interesting now. Does it change that Columbus is technically in the playoffs, like you said, Dan? I mean, are they not really a playoff team? It's really questionable whether they actually are a playoff team.
Well,
they make it, but they make it be, and they make it on, they make it by the very literally the skin of their,
NHL says they are, Rick.
Right, but if you look at what we talked about, right, those numbers that were put up lends more credence to selecting Torts for Coach of the Year because he had very little to work with. If you go by that,
This wasn't a team like Montreal who gets in the 24-team playoff because it was 24 teams. Columbus was in it as a 16 team. They were one of the 2 wild cards. They were tied with Carolina.
Percentage-wise, they were. And points-wise, they weren't, right? I mean, isn't that
No, points-wise, they were.
They weren't points-wise.
No, I'm positive that they were.
Percentage-wise, they weren't. One or the other, they were. They weren't.
Here's Jen. This is why I'm not going to say there'd be that many more points, because last year, if you take away Panarin's 87, which clearly he affected Cam Atkinson, who lost some time this year too, Dubois had 61. Okay, but then after that, Anderson 47, Seth Jones 46, Werenski 44. It's the same guys, and the numbers keep dropping. Like, that's just the way this team is right now. They don't have, they haven't had scoring. That's why when they had Panarin, it was like that was like massive for them.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. All right, we also wanted to talk today a little bit about. I've got a couple quick things, but I think we should start off with the Sharks and San Jose Sharks. We're going to talk a little about the San Jose Sharks. Who's while we're here, I'm mentioning the Sharks. Let's transition to them, and they're as one of the teams that really, we were talking about the teams that aren't going to make the playoffs and what they're going to do in the offseason, and this is a good one. I mean, this is a team that. Some people believe that this is a team that if they get a goalie that gives them some confidence, they're suddenly right back in the hunt of everything. That they still have the players to make it. Other people think that that's way overrated and that they've really made some bad signings. That Doug Wilson has spent too much money on certain players, which I can tell you flat out were in Doug Wilson's decisions to make. Because Doug Wilson, on his own, left to his own devices, wouldn't have signed those kind of contracts. Never did, and that was always a problem with the Sharks. They would always sign like 5-year deals was a limit they had for a long time. Remember, and they instead, so that kind of ended with Vlasic. Like that was the first big contract they signed, and from there, it's gone on. There's some interesting numbers on the Sharks though. Power play wise, when you go to special teams. One of the more fascinating things, like I was looking at the power play percentage, their power play itself, not very good at all. They finished 23rd in the league, 17.5%. They scored 33 power play goals. They also gave up 6 goals. So it's like they're actually a plus 27 on the power play. They gave up 6 shorthanded goals. One of those kind of weird stats like that. And that's like you can't obviously when you're looking at like a 23rd NHL, they are the second. I guess other power plays below them, the teams that are in the play-in. So Nashville's 24th. The Islanders are 20. The Islanders and Nashville are tied at 24th, actually. Columbus 27th, Chicago 28th. But the interesting number is this: shorthanded, they're number 1 in the NHL. And it's a totally bizarre stat. Like obviously, I mean,
I just think that's the mentality of the Sharks. That's how they've always been. They've always had guys.
The weaknesses are. Well, I would say their defense and their goaltending, right? Which are two.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you can't be opportunistic on a penalty kill. Like I think it's a different mentality than an overall team defense.
But I don't know. They gave up. I mean, they gave up 32 goals and 224 chances. So it's 85.7%. That's that's higher. That's significantly higher than you would expect from a team. I mean, there's not another team that's not in the playoff round, until like. I don't know, like I'm looking down the list here is 18th killing penalties, and they're number 1. The other 17 teams after them are all are at least still playing. It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I look at the Sharks, and you look at their setup, and when you have 26.75 or 26.5 million allocated towards Brent Burns, Vlasic, and Carlson, and 2 of those defensemen really don't play defense.
Yeah.
Their defense is their offensive ability, the controlling the puck, rushing it up the zone. But defensively, in their own end, I've said for years, Erik Karlsson in his own zone is borderline inept. But the problem is that you don't get an opportunity to have him play as a defenseman often because he's always rushing the puck the other way.
Rushing the puck, right? And he's been that his whole career.
Right. And so, I mean, you make allowances for that because he's such a great offensive weapon, but they didn't score enough goals last year to make up for the defensive liabilities. And then for the second year in a row, Martin Jones has been a tire.
Right. Jones has been terrible.
I think that really killed him. I do think.
Yeah.
You're right. How does this team have the best penalty killing team in the league and be the 29th team defensively in the league? To me, that's just like that doesn't. I mean, that tells you how. First of all, that this team was horrific 5-on-5, right? That tells you they had to be unbelievable.
I think if you look at Martin Jones's save percentage 5-on-5, it's not good.
Oh yeah, I mean that number has to be absurd. But he actually probably was pretty good in the power play because
Yeah. Or so they could have basically, not yielded a lot of shots potentially on the penalty kill because you have guys like Burns and Carlson and Couture. And Hurdle also, to a certain extent, who can eat up the clock by holding the puck and limiting the number of shots as well.
Who can play defensively when they want to, but don't play that way 5-on-5.
You can do it in their own. They
5-on-5.
can play it in their own end. They just can't do it the full length of the ice.
Right. Which is true.
Jones,
I mean,
Jones 5-on-5 was 892
all right, yeah, there you
And
go.
where was that in terms of numbers overall?
overall. No, that's his 5-on-5 number.
That's just
Right. I don't know what that was comparatively by 5-on-5 in terms of goalies.
Yeah, like
It doesn't matter. It's not good. It's
If
what,
it's under
I'm not
90, if
arguing,
it's under
I'm just
90,
curious.
if it's under 90,
it's
here's
not
the
good.
low nines. If you're under low nines, it's not good. If
Right.
you're talking 8.92 at 5-on-5. That's
It's a
horrific.
below average save
That's
percentage.
below average. For a starting NHL goaltender. That's not acceptable.
And
well,
he's
they didn't score a lot of goals, and they gave up a lot of goals. I mean, they were 80. They were 29th, 28th in the league in goals allowed, and as far as goals scored, they were. I mean, they were better at the goals scored, but not by a lot. I'm trying to see where's the number here. Goals.
now, Jones is under contract for 4 more years. So, good luck unless you find a team that is desperate for a goaltender. And
Yeah.
there are teams like for example, Detroit, Ottawa,
Yeah.
maybe in Buffalo, who have cap room, who might say this might be a good place for him to get a second kick at the can, to get another chance. But you can't really have a lot of confidence that he's going to do that after the way he's played for San Jose the last 2 years. That's a big risk, and the 4 years makes it even a bigger risk in this cap situation. So I don't know how they're going to find some sucker to take Martin Jones off.
No, I'll make this argument. If I'm Jones's agent, this is the argument I'm making. Some goalies play better in front of some kinds of systems. Like there are certain systems where and this is whatever system San Jose is playing, which is like, basically, like you said, every defenseman pushing up all the time, which lends to a lot of 2-on-1s, 3-on-2 breaks the other way. And that doesn't suit Jones's style. But when the Sharks didn't play that way, which was many years before, when Jones was really important in taking them to a Stanley Cup final, he looked it looked like he could play with a team that played a different, like not such a wide open style. So
I mean, Pete DeBoer also is known for putting together a pretty solid defensive system out there. So, and that's the one thing. That's the reason why I think DeBoer has continued to get coaching opportunities in the NHL, is because he does put that structure in.
Definitely, that's a great point. And and they just don't play. So I mean, you can say that Jones is a traffic. Is a fire or whatever, but you could also say, listen, when you're playing a regular system, like look how good he is shorthanded. When you're playing a system where you're not dealing with 2-on-1s and 3-on-2s, he's not that terrible.
I do think Jones is an okay. My read on Jones is, I think, as you said, in a more structured situation, I think he can be a okay goaltender, a 1A. I don't know if he's a full-fledged NHL starter, and I could talk with possibly Kevin Kurtz from San Jose, and he'll tell you this. Yeah, I'm sure he'll say the same thing about Jones, and that maybe if you have better structure in front, it's a different story.
But
it's just
I'll give you the plus side, Ek. I mean, most of the kids from like the AHL that are up are up. Like that's the reality for them. But they did just sign John Leonard, who I got to see this year. I mean, he had 27 goals in 33 games. If you want to talk about a guy who was dominant in college hockey, it was him. But he also roomed with Mario Ferraro, who was a rookie this year for San Jose. And so they may have some instant chemistry there on like a third line if they want, or even a fourth line if they want to just have a scoring line on the fourth line a little bit. Put those guys together. Leonard could probably score 10 goals at the NHL level now if they want to try him. They may even get to the point where if the CHL is starting late, they might try out Ryan Merkley too. You never know.
Yeah, right.
If they do. Right. There's a lot of offense in his game. Certainly, those are areas where if they just get NHL average goaltending and Carlson's back and Couture has a better year and everybody has a little better year, they could be right back in it. But it really does depend on the goaltending, and that will sink them in the end.
And they have a decent core group of forwards, and we're not talking like Joe Thornton is done, but when you're talking Couture, Hurdle, Kane, and Timo Meyer, that's a decent core.
Yeah,
they're spending a ton of money on those 5 guys. I mean, Meyer's at 6, Kane's at 7, Couture's at 8, and I think Hurdle's at 5.
5
6 to 5. And I heard a lot of talk near the deadline last year that Hurdle was being shopped. This is before he got hurt, but I think he had an ACL injury.
Yeah.
So obviously they're not getting what they think is the right bang for the buck. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's relatively easy for Doug Wilson to sell San Jose to not unrestricted free agent forwards, because I mean you get a chance to live in Northern California.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much flexibility he has with that core 3 defense and that core 4 forwards to make moves that are financially risky. He can shake things loose a little bit by moving a guy like Jones and finding a cheaper option in goal. But he doesn't have a lot of flexibility, and there's not a ton coming in terms of prospects. And Merkley on defense, he's probably going to need another year or 2 before he's ready to step in the NHL. There is some talent there, but they really need to I think infuse more talent in that organization.
Well, LeBlanc's going to cost them money now because he's an RFA, right? He signed for a very below market price of $1 million, so that's additional money. And you've already said the guys they've earned the contract. I think was it 7 players make $51 million.
Yep.
These are about $30 million. So you don't have an enormous amount of room to start playing with, to start adding guys. You need to add guys, as you said, on the cheap, but guys who can be mildly productive. And pretty much there was a whole decline in several players last year in terms of what we expected, mainly with Jones and goal.
Yeah, and I think when you watch those games, they were in some of those games, and Jones' bad goals that he would give up would just derail the whole team.
That really was the case, because I watched a lot of their games, and they were in games. I mean, they gave up a ton of shots. And also, I mean, they also were very bad at holding leads. They were really bad when it came to holding leads. And that's another thing, by the way, we didn't mention that, the Flyers have improved upon is the ability to hold a lead. That was another issue with them. Mm-hmm. By the way, beginnings of games and ends of games where Flyers how many times the teams pull a goalie and actually come back and tie it against the Flyers over the last couple of years.
One other thing about the Sharks,
and the Sharks were terrible about that. Terrible.
Yeah, one other thing about the Sharks that I'm wondering is, they fired DeBoer. They brought in Bugner. Bugner was the interim coach. And he was the interim coach when the season ended. We haven't heard any talk about him being named the head coach. Is there, a potential that they're going to either remove the interim tag off Bugner or go with somebody else? Is a guy like Babcock, is a guy, somebody of a higher stature that they go after as a head coach?
Well, Gallant would be interesting, wouldn't it be? I mean, like, if you took like
they could do it tomorrow, like why wouldn't they have done it already?
Right. I have a feeling. I mean, Doug Wilson tends to be the promote from within type guy.
Yeah,
and that he'll give this guy a chance, as everybody can. But I think I agree with you that, like, when you have like Gallant, I mean, that would be fascinating, because the Sharks Vegas rivalry. If I'm San Jose, that's a fun move to make. Bring in Gerard Gallant, but and I don't think Babcock will get a job there at all. I mean,
look, everything has to break right for the Sharks to be good. I think LeBlanc could add a little more offense, but everything has to break right for them. That's just there's not a lot of room for error there.
I mean, Couture, injuries too. They continue to bother him. Pavelski, the loss of Pavelski was big. I mean, he's a major
perspective. Yes, I would agree. Not necessarily as much from the production anymore se, but certainly from the leadership perspective.
I mean, he was the guy. Like he was very much. I mean, the fans out there love Pavelski. Like I have my friends out there who still live out there who are like Sharks fans. They are all devastated by Pavelski signing someplace else. That was a big deal because he just is such a great leader. So. Yeah, I mean, I think that can they come back quickly? I think they're kind of built. They're not really built as a rebuilding team right now, and that's where Doug Wilson's got his hands full. I think because they're sort of like you said, Russ. Everybody who's up is up, kind of. They're
right
in that spot, and they have some potentially very good young players. But does the goaltending is the goaltending, and they have a defense that should be good. I mean, Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson. I mean. That's like insane, think about this.
But okay, the issue there I think is less about those two because I don't see a significant offensive drop off for either one of them, unless Karlsson's series of injuries over the last couple of years slows him down and makes him more vulnerable. The problem is Vlasic. Vlasic is a defense first defenseman. He's slowed down. I think he's a little slightly above average now, whereas he was good enough a few years ago to play on Olympic teams.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. And he's got 6 more years at $7 million. That's an albatross of a deal.
Well, I wonder if he'll be able to redefine his game a little bit. He's such a smart guy. I wouldn't be shocked. he feels like, sometimes you see these players that that head downhill because they were really good. Like Vlasic considers himself an all-star. He's like that. He's been in Team Canada, like you say, all that stuff. He's been in the Olympics, but he's still trying to do what he did when he was out. Maybe he's the kind of guy who's smart enough to be able to adjust and become very effective for them again. I could see that. I could see that happening with him. He's the kind of guy I could see.
Not impossible.
No. If he turns around, then you have three stellar defensemen. I mean, Burns and Eric, Burns and Carlson are two of the best.
But Carlson's got to put up more points than he has in the last 2 years.
But usually when it's a defense first defenseman, and I'll use it. And granted, I think Vlasic has been better than this guy in his career. But a guy like Mark Stahl, when they slow down, there's nowhere to go. It's like they're a defensive first defenseman, and if they don't have the speed to be able to react, then they're not a defense first defenseman anymore. They're just a slow defenseman.
I'll tell you Mark Stahl's best play as an example. Even though he had a decent year this year, most of the time he's out there late in the period, in the early periods, just trying to keep the front of the net clear and actually just get the puck in the corner so guys can get the puck up the ice. I think Vlasic's a little better than that, but I don't know if he's that much better than that.
Yeah. I mean, they took the most penalties. They took the fifth most penalties in the league. The Sharks did last year too, which shows. It's a lot of different things. It shows one, that does tend to be slow defenses tend to take penalties. You see that, and you also see, frustration leads to penalties, right? So, but then again, that doesn't always matter. I mean, the number 1 and 2 and 3 were the Rangers, Tampa, and the Capitals. I mean, in taking penalties last year. So
I would think no matter what, I mean, can Aaron Dell be back? Really?
Yeah, I know.
Or is his contract up? I'm not sure. But even if he were under contract, I would not bring him back.
No, he's a UFA after that.
Okay. So I would have to at least go and get somebody. And to be very honest, I mean, again, Anthony won't like hearing this, but if I were them, I might outbid Philly for Brian Elliott. They need something stable to be in there with Jones because, and again, you might be able to sell Elliott on the fact that he could get more games with San Jose than he'll get with Philly.
It's possible, but I don't know why you would think I wouldn't like that. Or something.
Because he did so well for Philly. I mean, I don't know.
In fact, it's on the young goalie out of the KHL, though, Alexei Melnichuk, over the offseason. So he potentially could be Dell's replacement.
Could be.
So they may not go that route. It was a relatively cheap contract. I mean, the funny thing is, you look at San Jose, and it's weird to say this, but them making the cup might have been the worst thing that happened to them because it gave them a false sense of where they were as a team. And they ended up expending more money in areas they probably shouldn't have and re-signed guys for more money than they probably should have laid out, which is putting them in the situation they're in now.
In fact, I think San Jose needs a goaltender who is cheap enough but can step in for Jones if Jones has another bad year. And the guy that makes the most sense, thinking right off the top of my head, is Georgiev because he's a guy who probably make being a restricted free agent probably a couple $1 million, and with him plus Jones at 5.75, that's not obscene when it comes to spending money on a goaltending tandem, and he's capable of being a number 1. And if they have a goaltender who takes the number 1 job from Jones, then maybe you buy him out at the end of the year and with 3 years left in his contract, because or you make him available to Seattle and you give him a first-round pick to take him off your hands.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Considering San Jose has a history of paying first-round picks for guys like that, you want to give me a first-round pick? We can talk. I'm not taking a second-round pick for Georgiev.
Well, they got a hell of a deal for Barclay Goodrow, but if you go back to their San Jose Cup team, and I remember interviewing them in Pittsburgh, they had a lot of great role players too. I mean, Donskoy's gone, right? Joakim Ryan was a guy who could fill in on defense. They lost a lot of that when they started paying those big contracts, and that really did eat away at the depth on that team. And I do think that's a big part of when they're trying to replace that depth, that veteran depth with a lot of young guys, it doesn't always work out. And I think that's where they're at right now.
Donskoy was huge during that run, and we expected him to take that step forward, which he didn't. He had a much better year in Colorado this year, which has helped them, given the injuries when Ratnanen and several other guys were out.
He's a talented kid, but it was very inconsistent, and I think that, to me, I feel like the Sharks aren't selling a rebuild. So I think that their goaltending, I think they could actually go a little bit bigger in goaltending than you guys are saying. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the Hopi type situation,
but I think Georgiev is pretty. I think he would be a big enough acquisition.
No, he is. He's
If they could get him, yeah.
What about Corey Crawford?
yeah,
I think
something
they
like that.
take a shot at him.
Can they afford him though?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, they don't have a ton of cap. They don't have a ton of cap room right now, and the problem is we're projecting that the guys who are at a certain level will stay at that certain level.
yeah,
Carlson's got knee issues. You got to worry about him regressing. You got to worry about Burns regressing. We've seen Vlasic regress. Offensively, you would expect that Meyer and Hurdle and Couture and those guys should stay relatively static, but
Yeah.
they have a lot of money tied up in guys that could very easily take a step backwards or a further step backwards.
Very true.
And starting to expend more money is going to put you in a massive cap issue where you're going to start sliding down the standings even more.
I think you could get Crawford on a Leonard deal if you just wait a couple months. I think he'll be out on the market and be sitting out there. And I don't think anybody's going to jump at Corey Crawford. So,
1 or 2 year deal.
yeah.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I don't think anyone's gonna. He'll be around. I mean, there will be goalies who'll be around.
Oh, yeah.
The question of what they want to do with it, and but I think the Sharks. I can see the Sharks selling their fan base and basically using Jones as a scapegoat. I could see that happening.
Nah, they don't do that.
Yeah,
Wilson doesn't do that.
not completely, but not overtly, but undertonely. I think they would be if they go and sign if they go in for a guy like Holtby, they are doing that.
Well,
Yeah, they're not going to go that big.
I know at the end of the year there were some people who thought Doug Wilson was possibly in trouble, for a number of years being, relatively safe. And then he pulled off the Barclay Goodrow for a number 1 pick deal. And I think it's tough to say that one deal redeemed him, but getting a first round and don't get me wrong, Goodrow is a good third line guy, but getting a first round pick for him was a coup.
Yeah.
And I think, probably saved Wilson's job if it needed saving.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair to say. I mean, that was an amazing trade. So, and they're a good drafting team. But like I said, John Leonard's a good ad. Get a backup goalie in case Jones doesn't go well. I'm not worried about Brett Burns. I think Jan's overdoing it on Brett Burns. Carlson's legitimate about worrying about that.
I'm not worried about Burns either. It's more Carlson, I think, Vlasic than Burns, in my opinion.
Right.
I think Merkley's at least a year away, Russ, and the kid who played.
But if he has no place to play, Mike, you never know if they just test him out. You never know.
The San Jose's problems, like kind of Jan was saying, the Stanley Cup hurt them. It also hurt them that they held on forever to Marlowe and Thornton like that.
Right.
They studied with that group for way too long. And that's part of the Doug Wilson thing, and that's part of what makes San Jose, and all that stuff.
They were still effective. It wasn't costing you anything more than money.
They weren't effective. It's that they were still the focus too much. It didn't allow other players to grow. Like Donskoy, guys like that, got kind of, they were never the guys. Couture barely got into that and even I think even them letting Pavelski go had something to do with this too. I think they just really wanted some of these young guys to have the responsibility, to be like the guys. And I think that
depends on what the dynamics of that room is too, Eck, in terms of, as you're saying, if, Thornton and Marlowe carries that much weight. And honestly, based on their achievements, they deserve to have a lot of accolades. But I do wonder at the same time, you would figure if you're management that if you think the room is good, for good guys to learn from, and you've let them go, that it's time to take the training wheels off the younger players and see how they respond. I get that mindset and feeling that they had enough years to say, hey, you guys have been in school long enough learning from these guys. Now it's your turn to take over.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't that they didn't. I mean, they had great careers, but they never. They also had the Sharks, but they were such an enigma themselves. Like years where they were supposed to be really good, or that they weren't. Years that they were really good in the regular season, they fell apart in the playoffs. The Sharks just had a history of not achieving anything.
Wait, I have breaking news.
Okay.
In good breaking news, it said Brian Boucher posted that he passed his first COVID test and he's got to pass 2 more to get in the bubble. In bad breaking news, so did Mike Milbury. And to have him in the bubble, I don't know who wants Mike Milbury in the bubble with them.
Obviously not the guy who he beat with a shoe.
Oh, man. All right, how about Grice, guys? Some people are talking about Grice in the chat room.
He's done. He's done. He's not. They're not bringing him back.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Enjoy next year in Zug.
What about Bern? I'd rather be in Bern.
Yeah,
Bern's a good place.
Bern's a good place.
Just one
Join some of X favorite goalies in faraway places.
Maybe
Come on, there's a list of them.
maybe he'll be Carter Hart's backup in Philly.
There is a list of them that he has
Carter
chosen.
I get the impression that Brian Elliott actually enjoys the situation he's in right now.
He does, but he still wants to get paid.
He wants to get paid. I think the Flyers can still do that for a little bit longer, but not much.
Next year's getting tight. It is.
Interesting little note here when the schedule came out yesterday for, obviously they released the schedule for the exhibition games, and that those are going to be boring, but it's Toronto, Montreal, Islanders, Rangers. They went with rivalries just to pique curiosity for people who haven't seen hockey in 4 months.
Forward to him.
But the broadcast schedule, as I predicted, Montreal Pittsburgh is an 8 p.m. game every single time because it's a Canadian market and it's a U.S. market. But
the biggest draw in both countries.
But day 2, there's only one in the East. We're talking about. There's only one play-in game, and that's Toronto-Columbus, and that's the 8 o'clock. When Toronto and Columbus are playing on the same day as the Rangers, the Leafs and Columbus got the 4 p.m. start, and the Rangers and Carolina got the 8 p.m. start. And like I said before, I knew that the NHL was going to slant it towards the U.S. markets because the broadcast contract in the U.S. is coming up next year, and they want the higher ratings. They've got Sportsnet locked in until 25, 26. Not that they don't care, but they don't care about those ratings.
I do want to point out to Eck that Kyrie Ramos playing in Jew Gardens right now.
All right.
What about Nabokov and Kiprasov?
I don't know, but these are different guys.
I haven't looked at this enough, Mike. But are they? Do they have it later in where they put Toronto at the 8 o'clock game? Do they move it? Do they switch them around?
Well, I mean, if other games have been eliminated,
are they going to keep the same games at the same times? And I haven't looked at the schedule yet. Really.
Only if the other series have ended, then they have some flexibility. But
so they're going to keep the same games at the same times every day. So it'll be like you saying, like Montreal and Pittsburgh is going to be.
Well, Montreal and Pittsburgh were for the first 3 games were all slotted at 8 p.m. Eastern. The Leafs. Their first game, there was no other playing game, so they got the 8 o'clock slot. But when in game 3, when other playing games were being played in the East, they played the 4 p.m. and New York got the 8 p.m.
All right, so what happened?
Yeah, but it's only the first 2 days for Toronto where you have times because their third game is on the 6th, and it's feasible the other series could end by then.
That's when
they haven't scheduled anything, so you have 2 games that they've given you times, Mike. So let's not make believe they're shunting every single game to a non-8 p.m. slot. It's one out of the 2 games.
But they're definitely giving the Rangers preferential.
We have 2 12 o'clock starts. I don't know how you say that's preference if 2 of the games start at 12 o'clock noon.
They're giving them each an 8 o'clock start is what they're doing. They gave Toronto an 8 o'clock start, and they gave the Rangers an 8. Toronto and the Rangers are 2 big markets. They gave Toronto an 8 o'clock start first, all right, and then they gave the Rangers an 8 o'clock start.
Pittsburgh Montreal has 3 8 o'clock starts.
Nobody cares.
First 3 of their games are 8 p.m. starts.
Nobody cares about the Islanders in Florida. Hell, people on Long Island and in Florida don't care about the Islanders.
Well, 4 o'clock isn't time for dinner down in Florida, so you can have your dinner while you watch it for game 1. And 12 noon for games 2 and 3.
Yeah, it's the early bird special. You're right.
They're hyperbolic chamber in Florida because no one's going to be going out anywhere in Florida.
And I'm kidding.
Everybody will be. No, you're right. You're right. That's the early bird. It's the early bird special, Jen. I actually like that joke. It's very good. Very well done.
I made the joke, but it's all good.
Bubble hockey from your bubble homes.
having my in-laws down there and then calling me at 2 p.m. saying they're heading to dinner. I get that completely. Oh man, they're gonna kill me because they watch this. But that's true. It's true.
I think the times if I saw like 12,
the best way they could do it.
9:30. It's weird.
I think they did kind of the best way they could do it. I think giving Toronto the 8 o'clock first game. The first game is the biggest one because it's going to be and then they have to give the Rangers. The markets the NHL has always been afraid of are Toronto, Montreal, and New York, right? Those are the 3 markets. So they had to give them what they can. Your Montreal is going to get the 8 o'clock start. Toronto is going to get an 8 o'clock start, and they got to give the Rangers one too. Because the Rangers, the bottom line is, some argue that they set this thing up to put the Rangers in the playoffs the way they set it up. So they really want the Rangers in there, no question.
Okay. So it's interesting in terms of times, right? So if you want to talk about a team that's getting shunted. Game 1, Carolina, Winnipeg is 10:30 Eastern, 8:30 local. Game 2 on the 3rd is 2:30 Eastern, 12:30 local. Game 3 is 6:45 Eastern, 4:45 local. So that's the team that's being shunted literally all over the place from pillar to post.
Which one is that one? Winnipeg?
Calgary, Winnipeg.
Calgary,
Winnipeg's in a weird time zone anyhow. They're used to it.
Edmonton, Chicago is a 1 p.m. local time start for the first day on the 1st. And then on the 3rd and the 5th, they start at 10:30 Eastern, 8:30 local.
And
So
Peter,
wait, so local, so like that's a 3:00 game for if you live in Chicago. That's not terrible, actually.
and no matter what time those games are, Peter's going to be fishing, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Interesting. Well, no, it's good. I mean, I think Winnipeg, Calgary. That's an all.
Who's Peter?
It's an all Canadian thing. Right? I mean, for sure. For sure. I just all right. There we have it. I think we're done.
We're done.
Folks, thanks so much as always for the gang, for everybody joining us. I'm not going to single anybody out. We appreciate you guys helping. And
Thank you.
thanks to the cat.
She just woke up.
We'll be back again tomorrow. Tomorrow I wanted to talk about my blog today is about the best NHL players of all time that weren't drafted. So we'll get into that maybe tomorrow. And having people put their votes out there. I do that because of Panarin being an obvious story right now as an undrafted player.
David Ayers.
Yeah, right. And what Panarin's doing is pretty remarkable for an undrafted player.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes, and I say
I'm working on my sign language.
And Mike did this as well, Mike, and for Mike's benefit, I said that the undrafted player thing that I'm doing does not include WHA players. Like Gretzky obviously wasn't drafted in the NHL, but let's not, like Peter Stastny wasn't drafted in the NHL. So some of these guys, WHA players not included. All right, remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will be back again tomorrow.